Home loan rejected, credit card declined. I've been there. Here's the truth. Your credit score is not permanent. In this episode, we sat down with Brian, the VP of Sales and Marketing at UQual, to break down exactly how to get your credit from 400 to the 700s. No fluff, no jargon, just the real steps that work. The same ones he used to help people qualify for their homes, rebuild their credit, and finally get approved. If you've ever thought that your credit is too far gone, this one's for you. So, Brian, good to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I don't give up my Saturdays very often, but this is something that when it was brought to me, I think it's so super important to help educate people about the things that they're going to be doing because credit's so confusing and it's so important in our lives. First thing I always like to do when talking about credit is there's different algorithms for different things because people think of credit scores and they could just one score to rule them all. And that's really not it. For lending, of course, for mortgage, it's the FICO 2, 4, and 5 FICO algorithms that break down how much someone is likely to repay debt based off their past performance and a ton of other factors. There's the Vantage model, which is one of the most popular online ones, the Credit Karma and Credit Wise and all those online sites that when a client sees that, they're a 670 and a mortgage lender pulls in, it's a 605. It's like, what gives? Aren't they both credit scores? And technically, yes, they're both credit scores, but they're made up of completely different breakdowns and weighted on the systems. So the algorithms I'll go over today are going to be relevant to the mortgage industry, of course, which are those FICO scores, which stands for the Fair Isaac Corporation that came out with these back in the day. So there's 5 things that break down, and this is how crazy simple it is. It's 5 things. I can do it on one hand that break down the FICO scores. Number 1, which is the largest piece, it's 35% of the FICO scores, is payment history. That's your on times, your lates, your collections, your charge-offs. That's your total history that goes back and back and back and back and will set you up for either, and it's 35% of your score, set you up for a really good launching pad for the rest of your score. Or if you have collections and lates and charge-offs, which aren't the end of the world, everyone slips and falls, well, that launching pad kind of gets sunk down by that 35% of the score because the way it works in payment history is you get an itty bitty little star every time you make an on-time payment. But anytime you're ever late or have a fault or a slip or a misstep, it's a huge X right across the credit report that hurts the score. A new late pay can hurt someone up to 150 points, just one late pay all by itself, which is crazy, right? So payment history is where all your history on what you've done, how well you've done at paying things back sits, and it's 35% of the score, but it's just one big piece where 4 others that people can more readily control because I can't go back and fix yesterday, I always say, but I can work on today and tomorrow, right? So the second largest thing that breaks down a credit score is called debt utilization or amounts owed, which is the balance to limit ratio of open and active revolving accounts. And not to get too nerdy, I am a huge credit nerd. Revolving accounts are store cards, credit cards, lines of credit, but primarily they're going to be your credit cards and your store credit cards. The balance to limit ratio is if I have a $1,000 limit and I'm using it at $999, well, I'm 99% used on that card. There's no in between. And the higher I bring my balance to limit ratio, the less points I get on my credit score for that section of the score. Or, Lord forbid, if I go above 50, 60% usage, 500 on the 1,000, well, they're actually taking points from my credit score. So not a penny saved, not a penny earned, but actually taking some of my pennies when it comes to the credit score because that 30% of the score amounts owed or debt utilization is one of the fastest acting that we as consumers control. Because like I said, I can't fix the late pay from 5 months ago just by snapping my fingers and wishing it. I wish I could. But I can control how much I spend on my Kohl's card or how much I spend on my Capital One and all those different companies, right? So your payment history, 35%, debt utilization at 30%. Then the last 3 pieces, and it's so silly that this is so small, and they should teach these things in school if you ask me. It's length of credit, which is 15% of the credit scores. And that one's so super simple. If I have one credit card that's 10 years old, my length of credit, and that's all I have. There's no mortgage, there's no auto loans, just one credit card that I've had for 10 years. Well, my length of credit is 10 years because it's the amount of time, 10 years, divided by the number of accounts. If I go to Kohl's this weekend and they offer me a credit card to save 20% on what I'm buying for my son for Christmas or whatever, Well, that's going to take the 10 years, no months added, no nothing like that, because it's brand new. That's going to divide it by 2. Well, now my length of credit is 5 years, and I've cut that in half. It's one of the easiest ways people can hurt their scores is just by kind of being willy-nilly about opening things left and right, because the ideal, and this is how perfect they want people to be, the ideal length of credit for the FICO scores is 25 years. That's when you're maxed out. 25 years is how long you have to have your open and active accounts for, and being able to maintain, never open, and never need to close anything, because even closing an auto loan can hurt someone's score because it might be their oldest account. They finished, they own, they bought the car, they should be proud, and that open and active account is no longer on the numerator, and they lose on the denominator, and that goes from having one car that they had for 7 years and a credit card they opened up 6 months ago to now just a credit card that's 6 months old. Their length of credit suffers. So sometimes I'll have people close accounts because it's a brand new account and it's shortening their length of credit. Other times I'll stop people, like fighting them with a stick, to stop them from closing their oldest account. So it's kind of, it can be on either side when it comes to opening or closing accounts. Outside of payment history, debt utilization, and length of credit, the only other 2 parts, they both equal 10% of the score for those doing math at home. 10% for mix of credit, which it's a ratio of credit, and what the FICO scores are looking here, they're trying to make sure you don't have 10 credit cards, 1 auto loan, and 1 mortgage. That's not a good ratio, and your balance isn't good. They would rather see 1 credit card, 1 mortgage, 1 installment loan, and what they call an open or other account, one of those, which is an Amex, a Chime. It's account that doesn't have a limit but has payment history. It doesn't have an installment time. Amex is the most popular open account that most people are familiar with. So if you're someone, and I know a lot of people will be watching this, will raise their hands up. You have 9 credit cards. I don't want you to just go crazy and start shutting things down. You talk to someone like Michelle. Michelle, if they need us here at UQual, they'll send you on over for our expert advice as well. Although one of the things I love about you is how much you do know about all this kind of stuff. Is we look at it and say, hey, what makes the most sense for each individual? Because credit scores are kind of like a fingerprint. And then outside mix of credit, the very last thing is new credit. And this is the only part of the credit score where you get points without doing anything. It's you have these points until you do something, and then they take the new credit points back. So people always wonder, when I go to buy a car, why does my score go down? Well, we just ran through the 5 things. It's not going to affect your payment history. And a car is not going to affect your debt utilization because it's not a credit card. But getting a new car, they can run your credit 20 times, which is shotgunning your credit, as they call it, to try and get you the best rate. And those inquiries all live in your payment history. It's going to lower your score a little bit. When they give you the car, it's going to shorten the length of credit, which is 15% of the score. And it can mess up your mix of credit. And it can take away, or will take away, your new credit points. So it's really, really simple how these 5 things get broken down. Everyone's report, history, how much of your card you're using, how long your accounts have been open, all get calculated and spit out into that FICO number, which I tell people, and it's one of the things that always kind of kills me, is I hear people say, well, I'm doing really good, Michelle. I'm a 620 credit score. It's like, that's a lack of education on like the public system or whatever they want to call it, because 620 is not a good credit score. It's a decent credit score. You can get a house, which is awesome, and you should. Now's the right time to buy. But 720, 740, 800 is really where people are getting to the best spots. And that's why, one of the biggest myths I see out there when it comes to credit is, as long as you're in the 600s, you can get anything you want. No, that's not the case. And even if you can, you might not actually want it at the rate they're willing to give it to you at. Because too many people are car broke from just getting an automobile that, yeah, you got approved, but it's $985 over 72 months. It was a $40,000 car. They're going to pay $59,000 back for. That's like a whole nother half a car. You know what I mean? So those are how they're breaking down. The difference between the FICO scores and the Vantage model are too long of a video. I'd have a whole half hour on that. But the biggest things, just because people ask that, I know it's one of the most common questions in the mortgage industry, is why are the online scores so much different than what a lender has? They don't count paid collections for most of the online algorithms. So if someone paid a collection, it's no longer calculated in the online, like the Credit Karma score. Whereas the FICO score, paying a collection can actually zero out the balance, update what we call the date of last activity, or on a credit report, it's called DLA, and that renews it and actually lowers the credit score in the FICO scores. It's one of the biggest things I see is if you pay a collection, it's going to come off. No, for most of them, it won't. And for a lot of them, it will actually lower your scores for a lender. But their Credit Karma score will go through the roof. They also don't count payment history outside of 2 years, whereas the FICO scores definitely care for like the first 4 to 5 years, depending on what you have in your history. Lenders always talk about the 25th month. They'll see a bump because it's been 2 years since there's been no late pays, but it's still there and it's still impacting them. And then the way that the online scores, and it's one of the things that just the education is like they should put the biggest asterisk next to those scores, takes up like half the screen type thing, is they don't have the same weighting system on how much, like 35% payment history for the FICO scores, but it's 46% on the Credit Karma Vantage model. And they don't even go past all the same amount of time that the FICO scores do. So they're so different, so many different ways that's why I say I'd need a whole nother video. But the biggest, I love this quote, biggest myth about communication is that it actually happened. The biggest myth about like the online scores and things that people kind of sink their teeth into when they get it from CreditWise and all these different companies is that's a real score. The only place to get a real mortgage score is from an amazing lender like Michelle, or to even there's 1 or 2 online sites that you can pay for. But I always tell people to go to a lender because the score is nothing if you don't have a lender to tell you what it means and what you actually qualify for. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, thank you for that breakdown, because I think a lot of people just, they look at that number and they say, yeah, but look at this number. And, we can pull 2 numbers if we're doing 2 credit scores, right? And then I tell them those numbers and they say, yeah, but that's not what I'm seeing. I'm like, yeah, but it's a different weight system. So it's a whole structure. And it's hard because then they feel lied to, right?
Yeah.
And they feel like, well, what's the point of this one? And it's like, okay, there is a point, but it's not for mortgages. Having to really break down what we even know. And this breaks it down a whole lot, because as people now that are going to be watching, they're going to see that the reason why this can actually weigh in differently. And for a mortgage, it is really helpful to know your credit, the myths of it, and honestly things that can silently kill your score, which you'd even think, right? Like paying something off, you would think, hey, let's go ahead and bump up the score. But in this case, sometimes it can be something else.
Yeah, I like the phrase "pay to Caesar what is Caesar's." So I lived all over the world, and you get all these cool phrases and all the different upbringing I had and stuff like that. And I would never tell someone to not pay a debt that they know is theirs, because I want people to get like skeletons out of their closet. You want to not have things out there haunting you and all that kind of stuff. But there's a time and place. One of the other big things outside of paying collections, I see people that just kills their scores, talking about silent killers, is cutting off all their credit cards. I love this fella who's on the radio, and he's really, really famous, talks about being no debt and all that kind of stuff. And he's awesome. One day I'd love to do a debt-free shout too and all that fun stuff. The thing is, the way that the credit scores are broken down, if you cut off all of your credit cards and literally close them, pay them off, and shut them down, just to be very, very clear, well, that's 30% of the score I just went over. So when that person has people get rid of all revolving accounts and all credit cards, well, they're skipping 30% of the credit tests, and they wonder why they slowly increase or kind of plateau. It's hard to get an A when you're skipping 7 or 30% of the questions. That's huge. Doesn't matter how good you do on the rest of them, because it will take you longer to get there. The other big one is opening new accounts is one of the biggest silent killers. It is so easy just to think, oh, I'm just getting a card. I'm going to save that 20% Macy's. I'm going to save some money here. I know during the shopping season and into the new year, you get lots of offers everywhere. If you have a big goal of getting a home, or you just want to have like the best credit for when you need it, because it's an excellent tool to have and not need, as opposed to need and not have, is don't be willy-nilly about opening accounts. Don't be willy-nilly about closing accounts. Like talk to a trained expert like myself or Michelle, because shutting one account down for one client might raise them 20 points. Shutting another account down for a different client could lower them 70 points. And without having someone sitting there like a doctor with a scalpel to let them know which ones they want to keep and which ones they want to get rid of, I see people, they'll come to us from a lender and say, I'm ready to go. I paid off all my collections. I closed all my credit cards. Let's get a house. I'm like, you poor thing. I wish I met you a week ago. Let's start rebuilding, and let's start getting into like the next phase, because when people do go through struggles, it's not the end of the world. You just have to start taking the steps, just like anything else. I was in a car accident years and years ago. A lady went through a red light, just T-boned me as I was driving, and I had to do physical therapy, and I had to stretch. I had to learn how to like strengthen my knee muscles and all those kinds of things that you never think about. If I hadn't taken the steps to rebuild the strength and to go through like the rehab or the physical therapy, I wouldn't be able to like go to the bounce castles with my 11-year-old now. So that's why I say I could never stop her from hitting me that day, but I got to do what I could do to get into a better spot to be able to like live the life I wanted to live and be pain free, right? So it's the same with credit scores. People do ask all the time, like, what happens if I do get into the low 500s? What happens if I do have a bunch of collections? What do I do then? How do I get back from the 500s into the 600s and into the 700s? And it's a funny answer. And my very best friend and I used to run this company together. She left actually just over a year ago to like go run her own dream, which I love. We would do these kind of things and people would ask, should I shut down the credit card? Should I open one? Should I pay this collection? Should I do that? And we would look at each other. I can scoot over. So we'd look at each other and be like, it depends, because there's no generic advice to give to everyone all at the same time outside of a handful of things, because everyone's credit profile is so tremendously different. But some of the really, really big things for rebuilding and getting your credit back online when it's come offline, number one way people take step backs with their credit or kind of pitfalls or whatever it's called, is going late on accounts. Going late on accounts is one of the biggest things. I equate it to a bullet wound on a credit report. It hurts a ton when it happens, and it takes forever to heal. So when someone goes late, before the 30 days, call the creditor and say, hey, credit one or whoever, I'm going to have a hard time. What can we do? I can only pay X and you guys need Y. Can we work something out? I personally, in times of life where I've struggled, I've had to call creditors and say, hey, I don't have that, but I can do this, this, and this. Does that work over the next 90 days? And can we put this into like a deferment status? Can we put it into a forbearance? Can you mark me as on time, but stack the interest on? There's like loan modifications. There's so many different ways to do things, but just putting your head in the sand is one of the worst things in the world, because those creditors will keep calling, the bills will keep coming. And once you go late, it's harder to kind of start digging out, because now when I make my next month's payment, if I'm not making 2 payments at once, I'm still what they call in the industry rolling late, because I only made one of the 2 payments I needed to make. So never letting yourself go late. I know that sounds easier said than done at times in our lives when there's ups and downs and people are, the economy and all the different things, right? I've told clients before, it's better to let your power go out for 5 days and live on candles. It's better to not have your cell phone for 4 days and only connect to the company Wi-Fi and your home Wi-Fi when you get there, as opposed to go late on your auto loan. AT&T is not going to mark me as late on the credit report. Excel here in Colorado, I might pay $25 to get it turned back on 5 days later. I'm speaking from personal experience once again. When I was a young man, times is hard sometimes, but I didn't go late. So I was able to still have the credit scores to be able to continue to improve and continue to get in the spot. So 1, never go late. 2, and this is one of the things about building credit, and I already touched on it a moment ago, but if you don't have a credit card right now, you need one. If you have a Chime card, you more than likely need a credit card. And you can see me get up in the camera's face a little bit there, because Chime is a great company. And I don't hate on them. They give you your check early if you're doing direct deposit. They have tons of credit builder accounts, which are really, really cool. Their main credit builder, though, is not a credit card. And if someone is establishing or looking to reestablish and kind of re-enter the credit world and get ready for a big purchase like a mortgage, or just get into the best spot possible, save as much money as possible, well, you have to have a credit card. So getting whether a secured or an unsecured card. Unsecured is where they just pull your credit. They say, yep, you're good, Michelle. Here's a card, $300. I only want people to use on their credit card 1 to 10%, just 1 to 10% of the total limit. So I have a $200 card. I only use $2 to $20 on a monthly basis. That is it. I make my monthly payment when it's due on the due date. I set up auto pay. I live life on auto pay because I'm like the absent-minded professor, which is cool. And it makes it where I can never go late, go into the next one or the one before prior, and making sure that I keep just a small monthly activity on that credit card. So I always tell people, if they Netflix, to put Netflix on your Capital One, set up your Capital One to pay from your Wells Fargo or Chase, wherever you bank with, your credit union. So there's going to be a recurring fee that's going to hit that credit card that's going to get paid on time. Just keeping that 1 to 10% balance to limit ratio and making those on-time payments. If you don't have a credit card and you get a credit card and you do that, within 60, 90 days, your score will start jumping, just start absolutely taking off, because not only are you not actively participating in that 30% of the score that we talked about, but you're doing it in a perfect manner. To be the biggest nerd possible, it's actually 1 to 6%, but that math gets a little bit iffy for folks. So I always say 1 to 10%. The limit I put for everyone on rebuilding credit and getting to the best spot, 30% usage. That's the most anyone ever wants to spend on a credit card if they're really trying to build their scores. So on that same $200 card is a $60 limit. And Tony Robbins, I think it is, talks about should do's and must do's. We should save money. Most of us don't. We should work out. Look at me, you know. But I must pay my mortgage. Never been foreclosed on. Even when it was, I must pay my rent. I never got evicted. I made sure. I kind of like a roof and all that jazz. I must feed my son first. I should feed him better food. And I hate to like sound like a bad parent or anything. Like I love my boy. And we try and do good, but it's like a mix of like organic whole foods and fast food. You know what I mean? Like that's the life, I guess. It's just how it is. But I still feed him. That's a must. If people treated their credit card balances with that 1 to 10%, and I must never go above 30, I'd have less clients working in my system that are paying to help improve their scores and paying to use our platform and all these different things to get there. It's because they would just naturally be higher. And when, but Brian, I'm above that right now. I'm at 75%. What can I do? Take the snowball effect or the snowball method, excuse me. And I've got 5 cards and they're all maxed out. I'm going to start at the smallest limit, knock that bad boy down while making minimum payments on the other 4, roll that into the next one, go up, roll that into the next one. So all 5 of my cards within a short amount of time are between that 1 and 6%. And so I'll continue to use them like that. Some of the best tips, tricks, and tools that you can use to help build the scores back up when they've been down.
Thank you so much, Brian. We're going to do another video on building and repairing credit, which is what we're going to get into right now. So feel free to go to watch that, subscribe, like, and also if you need help with this specific thing, you see the knowledge that Brian has, go ahead and reach out to him. I'll make sure to have his contact information so you can have a link directly to him. So see you in the other video.